First of all, thank you very much to the jury and to the MEES organization, and it's great to be here in Barcelona. We are going to go north in Europe to this landscape in one moment. Sorry, we try again. Okay, we try again. Okay. Sorry for this. We are going to the south of Sweden, and it's in this region here close to Copenhagen. So on one side of the sea, Copenhagen, on the other side, the Swedish city of Lund. Here you can see the region with Malmö and Copenhagen here. And our project is in this city called Lund. I can maybe compare it to something like Oxford in England. So it's a university city, very ancient. It has a cathedral that's been there for 900 years. And it's a city that hasn't really expanded. It's been kind of intramuros and surrounded by very fertile farmland. And then new development happens. So on the top right here, we can see the motorway to, we can't really see that. We see the motorway towards Stockholm, where the Red Cross is. And in this area, the city decided to build more than 6,000 new houses. So it's a very, very dramatic change. And in the middle of this, our client, the cathedral, owns about 12 hectares of land. And this was the start of a very surprising process. So instead of selling to developers, the church authority decided to start a process to develop this land itself. And we were given this commission after an interview with the church. So they shortlisted a few architects and we started a dialogue. And the question was actually how to make a temporary pavilion in this landscape. And it's a landscape that today is pastoral and farmland, but it's already going to be transformed. This was in a way out of our control. So we arrive on the site and make a registration. And then we go to the city center. And to understand the medieval city of Lund, we saw it as a pattern of gardens, enclosures, and of course streets. So a lot of these secret gardens. And one starting point for us was then to imagine that a small part of the DNA of the historical city escape and move into the fields. So we registered the way of building in the historical center and these kind of enclosed gardens. So we got through this. And the second discussion was, of course, a discussion about public space. So if you're going to make new city, it's the most obvious thing, but we very often forget it. It's actually you start with the public space. Of course, the history of the Central Park that was kind of defined out in the landscape long before the buildings around it. So in a way, we had an idea that we should make an agora that would be the start of the new development, and that it should not be a temporary pavilion. It should be a very permanent structure. It should be something that could be there for hundreds of years, and it should be quite open what it will be in the time. So for the client, we present these few sketches. A kind of cafe without walls, or kind of hortus conclusus, but with one open side. So these three drawings form the concept and the idea of an enclosure and a wall. And then the location is next to two quite spectacular buildings. They are particular accelerators, so it's huge research center, a bit like CERN in Switzerland. And our project is this small red square. The size of the project is based on the size of farm buildings that you can find in this area. And this is the basic model we started with. And then we test this in a one-to-one scale on site. And it's of course, very, very simple idea. But then it's a question about the execution, actually how you build this. So we worked together with British engineers, Price and Myers, Tim Lucas, and we start to have a discussion about how to do this construction. And we decided to investigate this old technique of using rivets. You remember, like probably in the food markets here or in old train stations, you have these rivets. And this is almost extinct, so nobody's been doing it for almost 70, 80 years. So we actually had to do almost global research to reinvent how to do this. So we end up with a very, very kind of simple structure of folded steel riveted together. So in many ways, it's a handmade project. And interestingly enough, it was also then the same construction you could find in the roof of the cathedral. The other aspect was to make the brick wall. And we immediately said that we want to use reclaimed brick. And there was a new development, and they destroyed this old building. And we managed to get 50,000 old bricks. And to do the brickwork, we then invite the workers that normally work with restoration and historical buildings for the church and ask them, how is your perfect wall? What is your preferred technique? And we have a good dialogue, and we decide on the bond and how to do the brick wall. So it's a 120-meter brick wall. It's 2.3 meters tall. And for the workers, this was the best day or the best summer in their professional career, to be able to do this really, really big wall. So this is then the enclosure. To understand the project is also then to see it as a kind of intersection between a kind of urban design or urban planning, landscape, and a building in a way. It's quite open-ended, and as it is now, it's an object in the field. It's very open, and as the buildings will approach the coming years, it will become a void within the urban fabric. So it will change from being an object to becoming a void and a park. It's quite small in scale. And inside is a gravel surface, and the inner wall is, of course, sheltered for the wind. And you can sit down there. Now there are benches also. And for the garden itself, it was quite interesting because as designer, you immediately think, what can I do? How can I plant this and how can I design it? But actually, it took us some while to understand that no, we cannot touch it. It should be just with local plants first and then developed by the people and the users. So I'll show you a few photos to get the atmosphere. So this is planted from local plants. And, then at night time, it's completely transformed by the light. And under the roof is this huge communal table where you can meet. And in time now, there will also be the equipment like the grill, these kind of things. But this is not really for us to decide yet. So we specifically wanted to keep it quite open. So just a few details. The table is based on a found object, so it's a steel beam, and then there are rocks from the quarry of the church, of the cathedral, and just some simple wood construction. And then this is also then a theater stage or kind of event space. So they make happenings, they have dance performance, or like this, which is our favorite, which is the Swedish office called Big Studio, who arrange a workshop for kids to explore the potential of this room. So it's not necessarily seen as only a poetic kind of calm space. It is sometimes an active space. And we could also understand it as kind of typology for urban development. So in the same way that you have a kind of playground for kids, you can have a small community garden as part of new development. Sorry, I keep banging this. So just a few photos. And the next step is quite interesting. So it's gone to Barcelona. So this is Flores y Prats, and they are now working on the design for the next buildings. It's a tower, huge tower, with a cafe that kind of works together with the garden. So these are then the next step. So the idea of the urban plan is kind of gradually adding more buildings and curating the urban plan. So with this, I conclude and say thank you very much. Should I just sit over here?
Thank you very much, Geir. Now we are going to go from Lund to Madrid to hear, to listen to Roberto González García from Andrés Hacke Office for Political Innovation to present us the Reggio School in Madrid. So please, Roberto, thank you.
Thank you very much. We are very happy to be here. Thank you very much, of course, the Miss Van der Foundation, the jury, and also thank you very much to Eva Martin, the director of Reggio School, who is who is the, let's say, the trigger of the project, and we have shared quite a journey. And also she's the, let's say, the person who keeps actually alive the school. Well, I'm going to introduce very briefly the process of the Reggio School. Let me jump to the. The Reggio School is located in the north of Madrid. It is very close in the north, but it actually is in the middle of this slide. On the north, the north area there is one wealthy neighborhood that, because I would say that because of the, let's say, extensive use of the land, somehow it has damaged the ecosystem that we can see actually in the southern part of the slide, which is the public park of Valdebebas, which actually it is a long green corridor that surrounds Madrid from the north to the west. And it's a very, let's say, important green corridor in Madrid. The school actually is facing these two different ecosystems, and somehow it's been conceived in a way with the idea of how to negotiate, how the architecture can negotiate the coexistence with this environment, I would say. It's more closed image. One of the first decisions of the project was to do the building vertical. There are several reasons to do that. One of them was the idea of using, let's say, as less possible foundation. So to, let's say, minimize the impact on the, let's say, on the ground, but also as a way of conceiving the building as a way of stacking the diversity that is going to be containing. Actually, we call it kind of a lasagna of heterogeneous entities that we are going to go through them very quickly. From the very beginning, we have developed the work. We have developed the project with the, let's say, of course, with the direction, with all the pedagogical teams. We had a lot of meetings with the students. They were presenting also the ideas. We have a lot of meetings with the pedagogical team of the Reggio School, of course, with the direction, and. we ended up with this solution, with this this vertical solution that actually is very interesting because it somehow graduates according with the pedagogical program of Reggio school, but it starts. I mean, let's say the smaller children, they are somehow located on the ground, and when they are somehow growing up, they are also moving upwards in the building. So the last, let's say, the last stories, they are for the students, for the older students. So actually, it is this is really interesting because actually it changed the way in which, or it works in the way that the school somehow negotiates the coexistence. I mean, negotiates the relationship with the ecosystem, with the landscape. Let's say on the ground, let's say the relationship with the environment, it's kind of very direct, very straightforward, and this association is more sophisticated, let's say, when let's say the children, they are growing up and they are occupying the upper floors of the building. This is the entrance, actually, of the school. That the entrance to the school, it is done through the, let's say, through one path that leads to the main space of the building, which is called the Agora. That is the place that is used for the gatherings of the assemblies of the school, for the plays during the. Or theatrical place of that part of the school, and here the relationship with the environment is very, let's say, symbolic, I would say, because actually it is this big space is open to the landscape that you are going to see that is behind, which is this is the Valdebebas Park that I mentioned in the first slide. And another important idea related to that is that it is not, there is, we didn't want somehow to, actually it was one idea that was very discussed with the director and with the pedagogical team, but we didn't want to have kind of a corridors or very linear corridors to distribute the uses of the school, rather to create kind of a circular or different paths that allowed the users to inhabit the building, let's say, differently. And actually, this is, let's say, the sequence from the Agora. We have done the sequence from the entrance to the Agora, to this loggia, to the library, and from the library to the playground that is in the southern part of the building, and it is actually connected with this green corridor that I was mentioning at the beginning. So somehow, the idea of doing the building vertical also is related to the way in which the schools somehow are constructed, I would say. Contrary to the, let's say, regular way of doing the schools, which are kind of buildings, of low-density buildings that are somehow spread in the land and enclosing somehow all the uses, all the playgrounds in one, let's say, big areas. In this building, in this project, it was the opposite. The idea was to do one vertical building concentrating all the uses and actually using the public space that is behind as part, let's say, of this pedagogical journey that is part of the education of the Reggio school. So somehow living together with this ecosystem also is part of this, let's say, way of approaching to the building. Here we have also the greenhouse. That actually, this is another part that is important, or another way of connecting the building with the ecosystem that I was mentioning at the beginning. It was, let's say, more direct in the, let's say, the ground floor. more symbolic, let's say, in the agora or in the, let's say, in the main floor. And there is also another way of connecting to that ecosystem, which are the small gardens that are somehow spread in the building. Gardens that negotiate this coexistence that I was mentioning at the beginning with humans and non-human agents. Actually, these gardens that are somehow spread in the building, they are specifically designed to attract species, animal species, plants that are designed to just to attract the biodiversity of the area, of this ecosystem, in order to somehow reconstruct what it was lost because of the extensive use of the area. So these are the gardens that are let's say spread in the building, and they are only, let's say, they are only accessible for maintenance. Then these are, let's say, the building in that way is part of this larger ecosystem. And actually, this is one thing that for us it was very important from the beginning, but also for the school. Actually, it is one. I mean, somehow these sensitivities toward the ecosystem, they were aligned. Actually, it is part of the day-to-day life of the school to reenact somehow this caring and knowledge, I would say, about the surrounding ecosystem that they are doing. They are somehow enlarging this idea, or extending this idea of the small gardens and the looking for the biodiversity of the ecosystem by the activities of the school. For example, there is one garden that is designed for bats, and actually they are working as a part of the, let's say, of the day-to-day life. They are working in that direction. These gardens are. This garden, I mean, there is the rainwater is collected from the roof. So these gardens are somehow, let's say, autonomously working to restore this ecosystem. The aesthetic, one last question. The aesthetic of the building is quite rough, I would say, or quite challenging, because actually one of the main ideas at the beginning was to use as less, let's say, material as possible. So there are no ceilings, no technical floorings. All the services are visible in the way that they are. So yes, somehow it is kind of it could be kind of a shocking in the way that it is not actually for a school, but it was one decision that was taken from the beginning, and I mean it was shared. This sensitivity was shared from the very beginning, and yeah, it was everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Roberto. And now we are going to start with the last presentation. And I'm going to invite Gustav, Düsing, and Max Hacke, the authors of the winning project. This is a study pavilion on the campus of the Technical University of Braunschweig in Lower Saxony. And the stage is yours. Thank you and congratulations.
Hi. Thanks everyone for coming, and thanks for the EUmies Award team and everyone and the jury and all of this, but we will get to this later, I guess. So we do this quickly and try this. And I try this. So my name is Gustav Düsing and
Max Hacke.
And I'm gonna introduce you to the project, and it's very important to mention the process that is behind this project. So this is the campus of the TU Braunschweig. It's a kind of collage of different building types. You see some really beautiful post-war modernism here. You see some old original buildings that survived the war, and then you see here a high-rise building, which is the home for the architecture faculty. And so it's important to see that there's a high-rise building and it's the architecture faculty, because we will get to it, why our building looks different to that. So when I started teaching at that university in 2015, there was a competition that came up that was organized for the faculty. So the organizers of the competition, they said that why should we ask all architects of Europe to deliver a scheme if we have a lot of potential and young architects here in the faculty that can give it a go, and they have a chance to design something, because I guess with many other European cities in Germany, we have the problem that it's very hard to get into competitions as young officers because you don't have references. So they said, all right, let's do something low barrier. And I was just there, I didn't know many people, so I asked Max, who I knew from studying, and I said, hey, there's a really good chance, let's give it a go. And so the brief was about designing a house for desk space for students. And in the very beginning, it was about desk space for architecture students. And but later it changed because there was interest from the other faculties, and now it's for everyone. But starting off with this idea about studying architecture was a reference to us, because there's a thing in Braunschweig that is quite famous for Braunschweig. It's the idea of a drawing room. These are self-organized spaces. The university rents those spaces, and then the students occupy it, and they organize everything by themselves, and they hand over the space from generation to generation. And it's a very beautiful model of learning. It's by learning from each other. It's by learning through conversation, through parties. And so these drawing rooms are sort of extensions of these students' living rooms. And here you see a map where they are. So this is our site, and you see there are some off campus, some are on campus. So we started thinking that maybe this model is a good starting point to think about this building and the way we maybe think of studying in the future, because as we all know, with the Corona pandemic and all this, the let's say the campus as a building or as a space has to reinvent itself, because there's a lot of teaching online right now, and then there's AI, and so a lot of kind of established models are becoming redundant in the future. So we said, so this building should be more of a social space than anything else. So we started imagining this kind of drawing room culture, this kind of messiness, the idea of self-governance and all this to be spread over a larger building. So since the idea of these drawings room are very basic democratic, so they have, they vote for things, and so we said, in a kind of naive way, we said, right, this building also has to be very democratic, and that's why it can only be a square, because the square in its original nature has no hierarchy. It doesn't have a front or back, it doesn't have a long side and a short side. So it's very simple. It's a universal form, and also it's a kind of the typical pavilion kind of plug-in module. And we said, all right, let's organize everything that is not necessary in need of daylight. We put it in the middle, like toilets and these things, and around it you get a donut-shaped space that is 2 stories high. But since we believe that the separation of floors, like we have it in this high-rise building, is not appropriate for the idea of communication and the idea of self-organizing and randomness. So we said that, yes, we have 2 floors, but we want to open up those floors so there's no separation between it. And on the other hand, we said that we also don't want any hierarchy in the way this building is moved through. So we said there's a decentralized access. So you have all these platforms and bridges and stairs that are in their size, sort of representing the size of these drawing rooms, which we thought that it is a kind of natural size in which people are able to kind of organize themselves in. And so you can enter this building from 9 different ways. And once you're inside, you can also move around in a lot of different ways. So there's this idea about randomness, where you bump into each other, where you meet people by chance, and on the other hand, this decentralized access also helps to not create traffic zones, because we say that this building wants to be equally the same and equally having access to daylight. And therefore we decided to glass the building all the way, so all the spaces have the same access to daylight. And in order to kind of continue this idea about this system of platforms and bridges, we said that we let the facade step in one grid, so you have exterior spaces, which are, on the one hand, let's say, easier to make, you use less material. At the other hand, you can use those spaces, let's say, half of the year at least in Braunschweig. And then also, I mean, this is something that also came up in the end, after Corona, these are pandemic-safe spaces, you know, they're outside. So this glass facade obviously has to be shaded, so we decided that there's a cantilevering roof around it that shades the glass facade and at the same time shelters those exterior spaces. So our building is somehow a kind of microchip on the campus. It's a horizontal building typology as a countermodel to this high-rise building, because from my experience, by being a teacher, you don't interact much in this building. You go in, you take the elevator, you go to the floor that you need, you go out, and the elevator and the 5 seconds you have is the only way where you can actually have a chat with someone that you bumped into randomly. So this is a countermodel to not only the high-rise building for the architecture faculty, but also to spaces like the Audi Max, the big auditorium, which is a space of, let's say, one-directional knowledge transfer. Like someone speaks, like I'm right now, and then there's people listening, and we say that this is, in a way, old-fashioned, and that the campus needs to have a new kind of typology that promotes the learning from each other, the social, and on the other hand, also, let's say, is a necessary infrastructure for the campus, for students to actually still have a reason to go to campus, because you can easily just stay at home and do online teaching and watch YouTube lectures. So why go to campus? And we say it's the social aspect. So this is a sort of, more of a public space for students. No matter where they're from, they can spend their days in this building. And now I give over to Max.
Yep. Can you hear me? Yeah. Speaking of social architecture, these were two conceptual references that inspired us when designing this competition proposal. One, Cedric Price, the Fun playlist that many of you will know, and Jona Friedman, La Ville Spatiale, both examples of a mobile architecture, an architecture that is highly flexible, can be reconfigured physically on many different scales, and that in order to adjust and enhance the possibilities of the users. So from this, we took this idea or developed a concept that we call the superstructure. It's essentially a space frame for the student activities to and it's essentially a grid of 3 by 3 meters, a column grid with a second platform in the middle, and it makes the structure of the building, and it also is the technical infrastructure of the building. So you can imagine that all the electricity runs in these columns and beams and provides not only the lighting but also plugs. So you can plug yourself into a column and start working, which makes the building highly flexible. It's also changeable in a way that it could be densified, it could be reconfigured internally. So if the requirement ever changes for the amount of student spaces or desk spaces that are required in this building, this can be adapted within this construction system. And the entire building is demountable, following the principles of design for disassembly, meaning that it can be completely taken apart back to its elements, moved to a different location, and and serve potentially a new purpose and even be built in a new form. While having developed this concept, our idea was to create something quite simple, a construction system that is essentially based on one module, which is a 10 by 10 centimeter steel profile that makes the columns and beams, and timber platforms are inserted to make the second floor. They're held in place structurally by the stairs, the many stairs that we have in this building, and the same elements of this catalog can be repeated to create a more complex framework. You can create islands on the second floor, or the first floor rather. They can be connected with bridges and stairs to create various circulation patterns. This allows for a highly flexible organization of the space, and essentially creates a very complex and diverse space frame. This is essentially the construction system. It's a kit of parts with very basic elements. You can see on the left-hand side there's a set of columns that are ever repeating, and so are all the other elements. Beams, stairs, platforms, they're all exactly the same size and can be repeated and exchanged. And this very simple kit of parts, when you put it together, allows for a very complex spatial system to be created. And this detail shows this simplicity, also the idea that the building is demountable. There's only screwed fixings, bolted fixings, so everything you fix, you can also take back apart. The facade is screwed onto the steel frame, and timber elements are also just laying in these beams. Here you see a first video of the construction phase and the benefits of this modular construction. It's incredibly fast once it arrives at site. I think this is a video of maybe 3 weeks' time, where not only the internal structure is erected, but also the facade is put on, and then the exterior columns are surrounded, and then the roof is effectively put on at the end. Again, incredibly fast, and then we got a first glimpse of this new infrastructure, this new campus social infrastructure that is essentially a space frame that should open possibilities for the students and the users. Here you see maybe some of the elegance of this structure and the detail. We did spend quite a bit of time on developing. You see some of the plugs integrated into these columns, and this ever-repeating joint where beams and columns are joined together, where the light fittings are inserted into the beams, and special features like this round circular skylight in the middle of the building. Then it was completed. We got a first glimpse, the first time we could turn the lights on and experience this transparency in the evenings. It was a very special moment for us, and it also marked the beginning of the building being inhabited, and then the sort of real test would start, where students can not only sit in the space, but hopefully it opens a whole number of possibilities for them. It is a space that is meant to be owned by the students. They take ownership of this building, and many of them sit there to study, but they also come there to socialize, to sit in groups, to do workshop formats, and slowly start to inhabit this building in many different ways. And this is an interesting process, because the first day they arrived, everybody was really quiet. Everybody had felt like they were in a new library, and slowly it's transforming a little bit, and I think people are starting to understand this idea that it's really a campus building for the students, and are starting to adapt the structure. They carry out the furniture into the outdoor space when they can, and put a hammock here and there, and makes for a very interesting process. There was meant to be a video here, maybe I can. show it again if it runs. Okay, never mind. Thank you, this is it.
Thank you very much, Max, and Gustav, you can take a seat because now we are going to start the second panel of this afternoon. So I'm going to invite again Océane Ragoucy, who's going to moderate. Also from Hage project, it's Geir Brendeland, and also are joining us the client actually of the this winning project is Tatiana Schneider, and also Roberto González García, and also the director of Reggio School, who is Eva Martin.
So during the winner's announcement ceremony that happened a few weeks ago in Brussels, the president of the jury, Frédéric Drouot, recalled that architects alone are nothing, but also that visiting the project they met people smiling, especially clients and users, and that it was the purpose of architecture. And I'd like to use this as a starting point for our conversation now. As the famous sociologist Howard Becker wrote a book called Tricks of the Trade, I'd like to talk about some of the conditions of the project around architecture, sustainability, regulation, standards, and norms. Of course, 30 minutes will be too short, but it will be maybe enough to talk about a few things, and we can just consider this conversation as a way of opening up paths to be explored deeper later in a more informal way during the evening. So I think you all share a way of doing things that has a lot of projects and their programs to evolve, but also a desire to, in a broader sense, to change certain policies. I really like the fact that we are here in a social space that has the same curtain as your project that we just saw in images. And so I'd like to start by with the Reggio School, with you, Roberto, and you, Eva Martin, about the project commission, because I think it emerged in a very specific context, in a very conservative situation, and that it led to a project that is all but conservative. Is this right?
Hola, sí. Claro.
Hi, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. One has to transform, right? This is a project that tries to inspire, but most especially it's a project devoted to childhood, to infancy, and childhood allows us to do so many things. Yeah, I guess everybody needs the translation devices. Yeah, well, as I was saying then, the projects for me or for us, in the world of education, we try for the projects to be inspiring, and the idea is to transform. And truth be said, when you work with very young people, with children, you realize that you can create so many things. I mean, our building is a building which is evocative. There are children that will see the building as a butter robot, others will see it as a boat, as a ship, and truly, education allows us all this. It means that we can, evoke in the mind of the children. And we have been free to do many things. I mean, there were not all that many limitations, or better said, limitations came from something else, not from the building, yeah? I mean, limitation is in your mind more than anywhere else, really. And I think that this can be seen for us. Textures were important. We wanted the children to learn from the building as a building. And, well, we had to comply with regulations as well, and the building is where it is. We've chosen very good architects, really exquisite architects who've made it possible to dream and imagine.
And so tell us where it is. What kind of neighborhood is that?
¿Cómo que ha dicho?
¿Qué tipo de barrio es el barrio donde
Yeah, what's the kind of neighborhood where the school is? Well, ours is a neighborhood that's very close to a new area, new neighborhoods of Madrid, and our plot, or at least the place where we wanted to build, was a very, very large plot, but at the same time we wanted a small space, because we didn't want to do a huge building and then, be too large. So we divided the plot into sections, we segregated, and at the very end of the plot there's kind of the back courtyard, that's very close to a residential area. And although we belong to the City Council of Madrid, this area is quite green. Roberto was explaining, right? I mean, we have a park that's right there, and then many new neighborhoods of Madrid in which, well, people are looking for something innovative and very contemporary, and that makes it possible for us to risk a bit, because as we're building from scratch, it was possible to have quite a kind of risky project. It's the north of Madrid, and this north area of Madrid is residential, and it's a private initiative. And the fact of its being private, at least in education, means that you can risk much more than if you are a public or state school. So it meant we could be more original, and we could risk more and be more daring, because in pedagogy, that's our idea of what we want to do. And the challenges in education, we want to move forward with our students, with our young people at the school. And the environment, the neighborhood, makes it possible for our project to be understood and also shared. Although, of course, we are in Madrid, and we get kids coming from the center of Madrid as well, not only people living close to the school. And because of this, even we have families that actually move. They change the place where they live to be able to attend our school. And that is an important transforming strength, isn't it? I mean, because we are truly transforming this place, aren't we? It was a place in which in the past, it was a very kind of conservative neighborhood. Now we've given it fresh air. There's this totally different school. We've got another very religious Catholic school next to us, and we are a huge contrast. We are lay, a lay school, no uniforms, totally open. So that's our, the ability we have to transform.
And even the project has been seen as an act of resistance, right? Roberto? Would you like to? Well, the project has been seen as an act of resistance in the neighborhood.
Well, actually, I think that there is one thing that Eva was mentioning that was very important for us, that this idea of being also visible in the neighborhood, this idea of expanding the playground, for example, of the school, expanding it through this green area, and the idea of that this is visible, that the activity of the school is visible. I think that it is challenging, but at the same time is kind of transforming the way in which we see the relationship with the school is not one thing that is kind of enclosed, isolated from society. It is one thing that is really connected to that, and I think that this idea is the importance of this idea, these ideas of being visible in that sense. Actually, there are some, let's say, formal strategies of the process of the school that somehow work in that direction, in this idea of that the building, it is not one thing that is isolated from the society. Children of the school, they are not isolated. For example, this idea of the installation of the services being visible, somehow you see, it is visible that you are connected to the flows of air, to the flows of electricity, that the building itself is kind of alive and connected to the landscape. And this is part also of the material strategy of the school, and importance. I think that it's important that all these efforts are visible.
It's interesting that you said that it's not isolated from the world, because of course we can really see it. And regarding the Hage, you were explaining how a wall can be more welcoming than excluding in such like place that was just agriculture before. I wanted to ask you how you worked from scratch on this project, as it's kind of an unusual way to consider public space today. And it reminds me of like when in ancient times, from the days when squares were dimensioned according to fountains and how many people were going to use them, rather than today, where sometimes public spaces is created in a city that is already all built. And so how did the program come about? How did it happen?
We arrived in a conversation that had already started before we came into the picture. So the church, of course, were asked to sell their land, as I explained, and they decided actually that since they'd been around in Lund for 900 years, they pretty much know how to deal with the city. And they know a little bit about time. So they had this very, very long perspective. So instead of doing this kind of very quick development, there was an idea of time to reflect and actually discuss. So we enter into a discussion, which is quite unusual as an architect. You asked actually to make a building for a specific purpose, but here it was actually a very open process. So we had a good conversation with the client. We were asked to make a space for gathering. And the understanding was maybe something like the Serpentine Pavilion. So kind of a very simple structure that could be removed after a few years, where people could come and meet. But then the client was very open in the way of then discussing the project. And when we made our proposal, it was an unusual response in a way that, okay, so you're saying this, what can this lead to? It started this big conversation, and actually that also then shaped the project a bit, I would say. But it was important that it remained quite open, and that also it doesn't really, it's not finished in 2022 or 2024. It's just kind of part of the process more than actually being a finished.
So it's a question of time.
Yeah.
And much. So what's the destiny of this space? What do you think what's the timeline? What's the, how long will it be this way? Is it a question of a few years? Or how do you see it?
No, we see it as quite permanent structure. So it's, time will show. So a few hundred years, yeah.
A few hundred?
Yeah.
Okay, because a few hundred, because here you have worked in a very specific time frame for your project that you just presented in a way that everything is modular, everything can be dismantled, and the possibility for the project to move is always maybe a hard thing to think of when you're just building it. So I wanted to ask you, Tatiana Schneider, how did it happen when someone proposes to make a project when dismantleable possible to move as soon as it's on and it's built?
Well, I guess the project at the moment is a promise of flexibility, no? A promise of movability, a promise of something then that can be dismantled and can be taken somewhere else. No? The system is somehow in place, and it's been designed in that kind of mind. But whether we'll actually do it or whether any changes will be done, that's also down to the future users, current users, future users, and time will tell in a way whether the users, and at the moment what we see with the building since it's been inaugurated is that the internal spaces have been changing massively in terms of their use by how tables are used, how students group, how things are shifted to the outside, how the outside spaces are actually appropriated as well. And I think it's only a matter of time that maybe other changes will also come.
So building that very simple, very beautiful structure was quite a challenge in terms of regulation from your side. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, people always think that it was a challenge, but in fact, it wasn't that bad. Yeah. The thing is that we were quite naive in that time. We were just basically out of uni, more or less, and we just said, right, you know, there's a hollow steel section, so might as well put the electricity cable through it. Where's the problem? But that is a problem, turns out. But then, you know, you have to argue for it, and then things happen. And the good thing is that this type of building is, let's say, a rare typology. It's not like housing, where everything is regulated to the max. This is a house that, is a university building, yes, but it's also not a library that has a lot of, let's say, acoustic regulations. And I think we had people in the team that were, let's say, creative enough to think that, you know, when you put thoughts in it, that it will happen. And then there's the fire regulation guy, and he's fan of the structure, and said that if you would put a separation wall in it, you would kill it. So let's try not to. And then we say, right, we have a lot of balconies, so can we use those as fire escapes? And he said, yeah, that's a good reason to actually argue for not having a separation wall. So things somehow come together, and I think if you have a good scheme and you present it to the experts, the engineers, the client, the city, the building conversation, and that was a bit difficult though. But the others, once you explain it and you get them excited about it, then they make these things happen. And I think apart from the time that it took, because of just coincidence, pandemics, and the not existence of online meetings, that took so long. But apart from that, I think people were excited, and so they pushed things through the short way. That's how I experience it, right?
So what would a rare typology would be, as we're talking about all these projects? I think it's very interesting to bring that topic, like, of the rare typology compared to like some classical typology. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's not a library, as I said. It's also not a lecture hall. It is a kind of open space, maybe comparable to a co-working space, but then it's not commercially run. And then it's about the group work, let's say the come together of people, and so you don't need separation walls, you don't have these kind of meeting rooms or any of this kind of stuff. So it's really just one big space. And then, but if you have one big space where you want to host 200 people, then you need infrastructure. So the building is also a bit of a furniture scale. And we always sort of like, now the sponsor gets into play, a kind of furniture system that is in its scale is so small that it's almost like a piece of furniture, and that people can interact with it. They can appropriate the structure. They can move things, and they can hang stuff in it. And so I think it's kind of falling out of all these categories. And so once you have that, then people can't say, well, usually in a building like this, we would do it this way, because there's no comparison, I would say. And then you talk about solutions immediately. Yeah.
So when working on a public space, or when working on a typology like your project, how do you feel like people feel free doing in some exterior space compared to the one we were just talking before? The space is almost completely free. It's super well designed, drawn, but for now it's totally open to all different uses.
Yeah, I think this is one of the more important points of the project, that actually it must remain open for a while, and it will take time to actually understand it, and also the development around it will give it life, more and more life. But I wanted to comment a little bit on what we discussed in a way that I think the 3 projects have in common is really how to do more with less resources. So, for instance, your interiors, I am really amazed by this directness, and really, because of course there's not enough money never, and not enough resources, and we should be much better at doing this kind of thing, so really doing more things but with less resources, I think. So I see that in both these other projects as well, so trying to be precise with the use of resources.
Exactly, and reusing already existing elements in one that would be possible to reuse in the future. So you worked for the Reggio school with many different kind of elements that were reused from, well, lots of different elements.
Well, I mean, in that part, there was kind of material research about some things that were somehow fashionable in, I don't know, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So, I mean, we also, look for these stocks of material that could be somehow used for the school without inventing anything. I mean, just to look where those material could be somehow stocked. And yeah, it was part of also the strategy of the material strategy of the project. Yeah.
Yeah, and so also using the change in colors within the different levels, so it brings some feeling of those different layers of time inside the building. Is it something that was important to you, like bringing something completely new, but that brings this deep level of history?
You mean with the colors? I mean, it was kind of a very playful in once, I would say. I mean, it was discussed, of course, but we wanted somehow to make the spaces different and to put a mark somehow on the, let's say, on the evolution of the students through the school. But there was not kind of a direct decision. I mean, there was more, well.
The idea, let's see, there are many worlds within one world. So as there are so many worlds within one, well then every educational stage leads you to another different stage, and you end up in a garden at the top with a roof open to the sky, because time has gone by within the school. So every space, every level is giving you something different. So although you might have, the environment seems similar with all those windows looking at you, but when you go inside, you are entering all those different worlds. And it's so interesting because that is what life is all about. You have worlds of sport, worlds of study, worlds of knowledge, and that change in color, I think, helps you to say, well, now I'm here, I'm not there. So that was really the reason why we wanted to do it this way. And as Roberto has just said, to play with colors, also from the strongest of the common areas and the light colors that are those areas where one is a kind of more in solitude, and there the space is nurturing and taking care of you. So the space is talking to you at all times, and it talks to pedagogy too.
And actually, in Braunschweig, it's the world of study and gathering and social discussions, maybe. And I was really amazed to see how your references, Cedric Price, Jonna Friedman, are linked to the way you represent spaces, as we have just seen now. How does it work, like to be building something that is so linked to your references, the way these projects have influenced all of us architects? It's such a collective infrastructure that it's a rare project.
Yeah, I mean, I think these reference projects were something we've been studying in university. So they weren't directly linked as such to
this idea at competition stage, or it didn't just come out of this, but it's something we've been dealing with and researching with in our studies and the years later. And they came back at the competition stage because for us, they really fit the program and the need of the university to create a social space for students. So, and I think they also carry a promise of, a social architecture, an architecture that enhances the individual and collective lives of people, and that's something we wanted to translate with our means into architecture and project onto this campus.
And so how are now students working in it? Because we've seen a few pictures of people taking the chairs and the desk outside, and so how is it working now?
I think it's a slow process of appropriation of the space. I think there's obviously the daily life. It changes daily from the morning till the evening, and in the way it appears, the building, and the way it's used, what people do in there. There's a certain buzz at the morning, it's quiet. In the afternoon, it's really full of people and it's buzzy. And I think there's also a kind of collective understanding of this building that's growing on campus. So as I said before, at first people weren't really sure of how to behave in this building, and slowly there's starting to really to be the student culture. They're putting up posters for the events. They're putting up their furniture. They sometimes bring their own furniture and start to really inhabit it. And I think there's a growing consciousness of this possibilities that this building has.
And truly, it brings again to the question of what are we allowed to do in private space? Are we allowed to do the same thing in public space or in private space? And sometimes it's just a question of few lines drawn on a plan. So I think we're running out of time, and we can just go on these conversations then during the evening. And thank you all for being here with us today. Thanks to you all.